Welcome back, and welcome to the most requested lore video so far. Hugo Strange is one of Batman's oldest and most reoccurring foes, and I don't think it would be remiss of me to say that he really got brought to the mainstream in the Arkham series, specifically Batman Arkham City. But as with all lore videos, the footage on screen often won't match what I'm saying due to a huge majority of this lore happening off screen. But without further ado, join me as we take a look at the story of the Overlord of Arkham City, Professor Hugo Strange. Hugo Strange has always been one of those villains who feels like he was built in a lab specifically to get under Batman's skin. He's a man who studied the mind long enough to convince himself that he understood it better than anyone else, and maybe, somewhere along that way, decided that included the mind of the Batman himself. Early in his career, Strange worked as a psychiatrist at Blackgate Prison, and if you've seen the inside of that place, you'd understand why he probably hated every minute of it. He treated inmates like Alberto Falcone, and even had Harleen Quinzel interning under him at one point. Whether Strange had already started forming the foundations of his Arkham City plan during this time isn't clear, but the involvement of Lady Shiva in visiting Quincy Sharp about future plans, who you can learn more about in the lore video covering his time in the Arkhamverse, hints that Ra's al Ghul might have already been in the mix. Still, Strange made it pretty clear he didn't enjoy the work, with Dr. Jonathan Crane recalling how he'd rather be anywhere else but Blackgate, and honestly, that's fair, the place is a complete dump. Anyway, between the events of Arkham Origins and the lead up to Arkham Asylum, Strange was still relatively unknown in Gotham's larger circle of rogues. He was licensed and respected on paper, but usually he was a mystery, and he became obsessed with the idea of uncovering the man behind the mask of the Batman, dedicating his life to studying Gotham's protector from the shadows, and what started as professional curiosity eventually spiraled into something darker, and before long Hugo Strange was about as obsessed with Batman as you could get without making a YouTube channel dedicated to him. After years of diving headfirst into the study of Gotham's criminal psyche, Hugo Strange's fascination started to shift. He wasn't just interested in how the mind of a criminal worked anymore, he wanted to understand the mind of a man who hunted the criminals. Batman's strict moral code, the rule that no one dies by his hand, became something Strange couldn't stop thinking about, and somewhere along the way, the admiration became obsession. And because Hugo Strange genuinely shames us all in terms of being a Batman superfan, it didn't take long for him to piece things together. He built a psychological profile on the Dark Knight that led him straight to the truth about his identity, and it's here he discovered Bruce Wayne, Gotham's billionaire playboy, was the man behind the mask. From there though, Strange began to plot his magnum opus, a twisted chess game where the city would serve as the board, its people as its pawns, and Batman as the king to be toppled. His goal wasn't to kill the Bat, but to ultimately replace him, to inherit the symbol and reshape it in his own image. One of the key pieces in that game was Warden Quincy Sharp, the proud but painfully fragile administrator of Arkham Asylum. Strange saw him for what he was, a man with authority but no real spine. To get his hooks in, Strange enlisted Jervis Tetch, the Mad Hatter himself, who also has a lore video down below by the way, and promised him something he couldn't resist, a new quote-unquote Alice to do whatever he pleased with, and in return, Tetch would use his mind control technology and hallucinogens to make Sharp more, let's just say, agreeable. Strange groomed Sharp into a puppet leader, dosing him with Tetch's hallucinogens and whispering in his ear until the man was little more than a mouthpiece. To the public, Sharp looked like the one running Arkham and then later Gotham, but behind all that it was actually just Hugo Strange pulling every string. His first major move was to convince Sharp to run for mayor, because if Sharp won, Strange wouldn't just control the asylum anymore, he'd actually control the entire city. During the takeover of Arkham Asylum, Strange's personal files can still be found tucked away in the records room of Arkham Mansion, which, depending on how you look at it, either meant he still worked there or he was just terrible at cleaning up after himself. But either way, his plans nearly fell apart that night. The Clown Prince of Crime broke loose, unleashed the inmates, and turned the asylum into a war zone, leaving security systems fried and guards running for their lives. And for Warden Sharp, it was a total disaster. His reputation was in free fall, and his mayoral campaign was in tatters, but for Hugo Strange, it was the perfect storm. While Batman was busy cleaning up the mess, Strange saw an opening. He twisted the narrative and pushed the story that Sharp, the man who'd spent most of the night terrified and helpless, literally spending more time kidnapped than he did as a free man, was actually the hero who stopped the Joker. And in the aftermath that followed, people actually bought that bullshit. Gotham, desperate for a symbol of order, turned its eyes to Sharp. You know, not Batman, the guy who was confirmed to be on the island and who news cameras literally saw punch the Joker with a fist of explosive gel and take him out. No, it was Sharp who they chose, and that's fine. With the public now cheering on their new hero, Strange positioned himself right where he wanted to be, in the shadows, guiding the next phase of his experiment. Sharp's rise to mayor wasn't a victory for Gotham, it was just a victory for Strange alone. It was a move in Strange's long game, and now with his puppet sitting in the highest office in Gotham, the board was set and every piece was in motion. As Sharp got the spotlight and Strange got the control, their communication came in short clinical bursts through phone counselling sessions, or a discreet radio receiver tucked into Sharp's ear, whichever way you want to look at it. Every public statement Sharp made, every policy decision, and ultimately every word that came out of his mouth to an extent, was all part of Strange's plan and all part of Strange whispering in his ear. Under that influence, Sharp hardened his tone. He started to sound less like a politician and more like a man preparing for war, and when members of Two-Face's gang blew up City Hall, killing hundreds, an event which you can learn more about in the Two-Face lore video, God, I am on fire with these plugs today, Sharp declared Gotham a war zone, and began reshaping the city in Strange's image, one ruled by fear and surveillance. And while the public believed their mayor was reacting to chaos, Strange had likely scripted the whole thing from the beginning to finally get his hands on his master plan. With Arkham Asylum and Blackgate both deemed unfit to hold criminals, Strange unveiled his masterpiece, Arkham City, a sprawling walled-off district right in the heart of Gotham where the worst of the worst and plenty of innocent people were thrown in and left to rot. When Sharp appointed Strange to oversee the project, the Doctor finally emerged from the shadows, at least officially. With full authority over Arkham City's operations, Hugo Strange built his own private army through Tiger Security, a mercenary outfit that quickly evolved into his personal cult of enforcers. Using techniques borrowed from Mad Hatter's brainwashing experiments, he conditioned them to follow orders without question and not even feel fear. Some even called him Master, which is so weird. Anyway, because of how secretive Arkham City was and how tightly it was wrapped around Mayor Sharp's policies, Bruce Wayne eventually decided enough was enough. At the start of Batman Arkham City, Bruce stepped into the public spotlight to challenge it head on, questioning why this nightmare existed at all, and during a live press conference, with Vicky Vale and Jack Ryder in attendance, Strange made his move. He sent a squad of Tiger Guards to storm the stage, snatch Wayne and drag him off in front of the cameras. Strange ended up torturing Bruce with electric shocks, taking his time to reveal what he discovered long ago, that he in fact knew the truth about Batman's identity, and with a smug sense of control he told Bruce that if he interfered with his plans, everyone would know his secret. As his plans neared their climax, Strange laid out a trap. A psychological trap designed to break Batman completely. Knowing Crime Alley was where the Waynes were gunned down all those years ago, and with the alley now sat within Arkham City's perimeter, he prepared a cruel reminder. Chalk outlines of Thomas and Martha Wayne, a single rose, and an audio tape. When Batman returns to that place at any point the player chooses, Strange's voice greets him, taunts him, and mocks his grief, reminding him that no matter how much he fought, no matter how many lives he saves, he'll never truly escape what made him. I know a lot of you have heard this by now, but I'll let it run for those of you who haven't, because it's a really poignant bit of world building.
How does it feel, Wayne, to stand on the very stones that ran with your parents' blood? Do you feel sad, full of rage? Or does that outfit help bury your feelings, hiding your true self? Oh, you are a truly extraordinary specimen. I look forward to breaking you.
Back in the big city though, and once Sharp had outlived his usefulness, Strange tossed him aside too. He had Tiger arrest the mayor and dump him inside Arkham City, then publicly announce his location to guarantee the man wouldn't last long. But Batman intervened again, saving Sharp's life again. Hours later, Strange called an emergency meeting with Gotham's council. He warned them about a supposed quote-unquote arms race inside Arkham City, insisting that Protocol 10 was the only way to restore order. But what he didn't say was that he had actually orchestrated that escalation himself, supplying weapons to Joker, Penguin, Two-Face, and whoever else could stir the pot. When the council approved the operation, Strange finally unleashed his master plan, raining missiles down on Arkham City, Tiger helicopters flooding the sky, the museum, the steel mill, the courthouse, all key locations hit in coordinated strikes meant to wipe the slate clean as Protocol 10 finally began. While Batman raced across the city to stop him, Strange pushed forward with his plan, even sending his forces to invade Wayne Manor and subsequently the Batcave. Thankfully, Nightwing, Robin and Alfred fought them off while Batman stormed Wonder Tower, but on his way up, Strange appeared on one of the big monitors, holding a syringe to a hostage and delivering one of the best monologues in the whole series.
Stop right there, Batman. We need to talk. And I know you wouldn't be able to live with yourself if your actions caused this poor man to die. I have a question for you. Before my arrival, this city was drowning under a tide of filth. Have you ever considered that all this is your fault? Your presence creates these animals. Like germs, they spread. You created the environment that allowed the germ to mutate, to become stronger. Look at the Joker. Would he even exist if not for you? It must be depressing. All your sacrifices, and yet you are the one to blame. Oh, this is beautiful. We have at long last defeated the great Batman. Soon, I will take my rightful place at my master's side. We will rule over this world. So thank you, Batman, for all your help. Now,
Strange actually does make some good points here, but as per usual, he underestimates Batman and how stubborn he can be. Even when surrounded by Tiger soldiers, Batman tears through them, climbs the tower, all while Strange broadcasts plans for Phase 2, expanding Arkham City's model to Keystone and Metropolis, to eventually rid the world of crime forever. At the top of the world, Batman confronted him, and Strange was gloating until Batman shoved his face to the window and forced him to look at the destruction he'd caused. The Professor sneered, almost proud of it, claiming he'd commanded forces beyond understanding and blah 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 villain spiel, and that's when he was stabbed by Ra's al Ghul and killed, revealing himself as Strange's secret benefactor all along. Dying, Strange told Ra's she'd done everything that was asked of him, begging for another chance. Ra's refused and declared Batman the superior heir. As Batman tried to save him, Strange realised he'd been betrayed. He uttered his final command, Protocol 11, and set Wonder Tower to self-destruct. His last word before the explosion was the password for Protocol 11, Wayne. Batman managed to escape the tower, pushing Ra's out of the window with him, but Ra's would ultimately stab himself on the way down to ensure he was dead before he even hit the ground. And with Strange dead and Protocol 10 dismantled, Tiger's control crumbled. The surviving forces were actually rounded up by the GCPD, and Arkham City's nightmare came to an end. Not with Strange's or Ra's vision fulfilled, but with his entire empire collapsing under the weight of his own delusions. In a Gotham City story in Arkham Knight called Visiting Hours, Strange actually does make a brief appearance as a manifestation, appearing to Quincy Sharp, and I'll read that story now. Prison. The irony wasn't lost on Quincy Sharp, but that didn't mean he appreciated it. Quincy cried on the hard, cramped bed in his small, sterile cell, longing for the splendour of his city hall. He wished his master was here. Dr. Hugo Strange had awoken Quincy, lifted him to a higher state of awareness, made him the mayor of Gotham. The therapy, the drugs, the loss of free will, a fair price for such a gift. In return, Quincy had defended Strange through both of the trials. Even now, he clutched on to Strange's remaining secrets, dear mementos of a parted friend. "It's okay, Quincy," he heard Strange say. "I'm here." "Hugo?" Quincy asked, wiping his tears on the cheap Arkham City jumpsuit the guards made him wear. "Quincy, my servant, my friend," Hugo said. "We don't have much time." Quincy was crying again, but this time with joy. How, Master? How did you... Psychology, Quincy. Science. I am a being of suggestion etched into your subconsciousness by my living self. The therapy, Quincy realised. The hypnosis, the drugs. Stay with me, Master, please. I cannot, Strange said, looking benevolently down at Quincy, stroking his hair with a touch the prisoner couldn't feel. But there is one last service you can perform for me. Anything, Hugo, please. First, remove the sheet from your bed, Quincy, and tie it to the light fixture on the ceiling. And with Quincy Sharp's suicide, that is both physically and metaphysically the end of Professor Hugo Strange. This was by far the most requested lore video to date, and for good reason. Strange is one of the, pardon my pun here, stranger characters in Batman's mythos. He only appears for one game, and then he's seemingly gone forever, but it's in between games and before the events of the main series he really digs his nails into the world around him, and I think that's really cool. One of my favourite things about this series is how many people tell me they've learned something or taken on a whole new perspective on the series by watching these videos, and that really is a feeling like no other. Seriously, it's great to hear because it teaches me stuff too. I don't know all of this stuff in my head before I write these videos. I obviously have to research them, and where I can, I try to make my own understanding of these events easy for you to understand in the videos because it can get pretty damn confusing. So thank you for sticking with me, and thank you for watching the videos. I hope you enjoyed, and goodbye. In a Gotham City story in Arkham Knight called Visiting Hours, Strange actually does make a brief appearance as a manifestation, appearing to Quincy Sharp, and I'll read that story now. Help if I actually got the story. Fucking hell. You think I'd never made a video before? I'll read that story now, and then I'll sit in silence for 5 minutes. Am I stupid? Where is it?